Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. This November, the voters of Portland are going to decide whether to change our form of government, a form that's lasted 109 years. And you should care about that, even if you don't live in the city. Because in the greater metro area, Portland's problems are your problems. And that's why charter reform is our big story tonight. It's not often that a major city seriously considers changing its structure, but Portland's commission form of government is outdated and probably as antique as your grandmother's teacups and maybe just as fragile. It doesn't take much to break part of the city's dysfunctional system where individual commissioners actually run multiple city departments and really do not have to cooperate with each other if they don't want to. Just drive to downtown Portland if you want to see the result. And that's why a volunteer group of 20 citizens representing a diverse group of folks spent a year and a half studying ideas to make the city function better. Here's what they came up with. First, hire a professional city administrator to run the place and take control of city departments away from those city commissioners. Instead, commissioners would set policy, sort of like the state legislature. Second, don't let the mayor vote with the city council except to break ties. Let the mayor run the city day to day with that administrator. And then third, divide the city into 4 districts and elect 3 commissioners from each district using ranked choice voting. The Charter Commission believes those changes would make Portland much more effective in dealing with big problems like homelessness and crime, and also more responsive to voters. But not everyone agrees. In fact, 3 of the 28 members of the Charter Commission voted against sending that plan to the voters. And now groups are forming on both sides, one to support the plan, the other trying to kill it. Last night, the Portland City Club held a debate with members from both sides. And I'm going to show you some clips from the event. But before we do that, I want to sort of apologize for some technical issues. I don't know how you sort of apologize. I want to apologize. The feed from the site has the audio unsynced from the speakers, so that means you're going to see their mouths move, but the words are not going to be matched up the way they should be. So I just want to let you know, it's not your brain, it's the feed. All right, here we go. The first comment I'll play involves the question of multiple districts and multiple commissioners from each district. Supporters argue that it would allow elected officials to work with each other and their communities and to find solutions and problems better and to give council members a better understanding of how to solve local issues. But those who are against the plan, including former Charter Commission member Vadim Mazursky, say it would be very hard to hold elected officials accountable.
People do want district voting. They want to have that accountability that if one individual represents you, if they're doing a good job, keep them in office. If they're doing a bad job, vote them out of office. Those smaller districts, and I would say 7 to 9 districts for representing Portland. I believe Commissioner Mingus Mapps will have a plan by Monday as to what that would look like is a good number. That's along the lines of the school districts that you're voting for already. You already know the organization, the neighborhoods that are involved, rather than the plan where you don't even know where your neighborhood will fall in and which district. So let's have smaller districts where you have similar needs amongst your neighborhoods, where you're electing one individual, possibly using ranked choice voting like in New York City or Alaska or some of these other places, but not this very esoteric and unique style of ranked choice voting where with only 25% of the vote will get somebody elected. That means you'll never get an incumbent out of office because they always get about 30 to 40% of the vote. This way, you'll have that accountability, you'll have that representation, and you'll have that on the ballot in May of 2023. You only have to wait a few more months to vote for that, and it'll be enacted in 2024.
So what he's talking about is a plan by City Commissioner Mingus Mapps, who promises to try and put another version of charter reform on the ballot in the spring if this current version fails. And by the way, he thinks this current version should fail. But it's also important to point out that there's no guarantee that his alternative reform would get enough support from city commissioners to make it onto the spring ballot. Another topic of debate, the cost of changing Portland's structure. The folks who want you to vote no warn that it could cost as much as $40 million. And that's a lot of money. Supporters of the change, though, say, no. It'd be closer to $18 million. But then it might cost as much as $8 million a year moving forward. Here's Saul Mora, the Civic Engagement Manager at the Coalition of Communities of Color, which supports charter reform changes.
I want to start off by saying that change is going to cost. That's one thing that is absolutely certain. An alternative proposal would cost, and I think you have the benefit of not knowing what that will actually look like. Another thing that I want to add is that we need to invest in the infrastructure. Yes, money would be great for direct services, but let's think about the coordination of how you deliver city services. We could invest into one type of service, but if you're not actually centralizing the way that those services are getting delivered to Portlanders, that is the issue that we see here. It is structural. We don't have the structure to deliver those services to Portlanders across the city. And so this is a direct investment to get us to a place where we do have the capacity of city council members responsive to the size of our city. And I also want to end by saying that if you look at the percentage, it puts it into perspective. Of the entire budget, this is 0.14%.
So she's saying not that much from the overall budget. Which way are voters leaning on this one? Well, polling done by the firm DHM Research for the Oregonian and for some business groups found that 63% of Portland voters back charter reform. The company's VP of Research, John Horvick, told me people do want change.
The last time Portlanders had charter reform on the ballot was 2007. And at the time, about 2/3 of Portlanders said that the city was headed in the right direction. Now about 1 out of 10 Portlanders think that the city is headed in the right direction. So this is an opportunity for them to vote on something to change the direction of the city. And they're anxious to say yes to something. Over 60%, I think it was 63%, initially said, yeah, I'm interested in saying yes to this ballot measure.
Yeah, bring it on, they're saying. But Horvick also said that voters are not totally locked in yet. 1 in 4 say, yeah, they're locked in. But the rest are either leaning or thinking about it, or they're also open to arguments about why it's a bad idea. So that's why you're going to hear a lot more about this huge potential change between now and the November election. Speaking of polling, that same firm, DHM, is also out now with numbers on the Portland City Council race between incumbent Joanne Hardesty and challenger Renee Gonzalez, a lawyer. The Oregonian reports that the poll shows 50% of likely voters in Portland would pick Gonzalez, 26% would pick Hardesty, 25% still undecided. The two debated today. KGW and the Portland City Club hosted. One of the topics that came up was charter reform. Our David Molko was the moderator and joins us now. David?
And Pat, one of the candidates was pretty clear on how they plan to vote. The other said yes, they made a decision, but then refused to make that decision public. So let's hear first from Renee Gonzalez.
At this moment in time, I'm a no. I think it is too complex to implement, potentially too expensive. And a number of provisions are experimental, at least in the United States. They have been adopted overseas. Having said that, I think the city is clamoring for charter reform. I would like to compare side by side what Mr. Mapps will propose as early as next week, compare the two side by side, and then make a final decision at that point. But right now, I'm a no.
I don't think elected leaders should be trying to tip the scale one way or the other, which is why my vote on this issue is not, I'm not going to tell you.
Have you decided?
I have.
All right, but you're not going to reveal which way.
I'm not going to
you're
reveal
going.
because, again, I respect too much the time that the charter commissioners have spent out talking to people. I'm really excited. We're having a lot of exciting community conversations around charter change, and I don't want whether I'm a yes or no, to actually weigh at all in how people interact with this ballot measure.
Okay, in all fairness, I did try a couple times there. I also asked the candidates if the measure fails, how they'd work within the current system to make it more efficient and effective. You can watch how they answer as well as the entire debate right now. That's on our KGW YouTube channel. All right, we also wanted to touch on another topic that is getting a lot of attention over the past couple weeks. Renee Gonzalez hit with a $77,000 fine by the city's small donor elections program, which says he took a deeply discounted rent for his campaign office downtown and then didn't report it. His campaign paying $250 a month for a space elections officials say has a fair market value closer to $7 grand. Gonzalez maintained that the state of downtown is, quote, dismal right now, he says, and that landlords are desperate for anything they can get. So I asked him if the same rules that apply to everybody else should also apply to him. Here's what he said.
Downtown is facing some very unique challenges in our collective difficulties with crime and homelessness. Landlords can't fill first floor vacancies right now on the commercial side. So the rules absolutely apply to me. We have a disagreement in interpreting the regs with the city right now. That's the extent of it. It's a technical disagreement. It is not a philosophical one.
So from here, does this mean, I guess, what happens next for you? The city rejected, I guess, your request for reconsideration. What are you planning next?
We will appeal. On advice of council, we will appeal.
And if you lose that appeal, what then?
We will continue to go through the process of getting an outside review of that. And then if determined we're required to pay, we'll pay.
All right, not sure about that outside review there. One final big topic, though, Pat, there are so many we could talk about. Commissioner Joanne Hardesty's historically contentious and fractured relationship with the Portland Police Bureau. Accusations against each other have come from both sides, in a few that really heated up during the 2020 protests. So I asked Hardesty how she would describe her current relationship with the Bureau and if she believes she can still be an effective leader when it comes to police reform.
I do believe I am a very effective leader when it comes to police reform. I meet regularly with Chief Lavelle, and I meet regularly with Deputy Chief Fromm. I also meet regularly with all the first responder bureaus as we roll out Portland Street Response. I will say that it was horrifying to be targeted by the police for a false allegation that, as Transportation Commissioner, would have actually made me unfit for my job. And so there were 3 police officers that were disciplined, 2 911 operators, and because of the widespread, that information went wild. And that's why I had to sue Portland Police Association to hold them accountable for having their president set me up for false prosecution.
Kind of leaves you wanting to hear more, right? Well, don't worry. Highlights from the debate are coming up at 7 on a special edition of Straight Talk, including much more about the candidates' plans to improve public safety and policing and how they think they can tackle homelessness. Again, we've got the entire debate, about 90 minutes start to finish, up right now on KGW.com and our KGW YouTube channel.
Still to come on The Story. A former West Linn doctor is not facing criminal charges, even though dozens of women have come forward accusing him of sexual abuse. A grand jury decided the evidence wasn't there.
This is why women don't go to police. This is why people don't report, because they're not taken seriously.
Now, some alleged victims are coming forward, sharing their stories and questioning how the case was handled by prosecutors, how the district attorney is responding when The Story returns. Now to a story that we think is worth your time, and it comes from Amelia Templeton and Conrad Wilson over at OPB. It's titled, "Key State Witness Did Not Appear Before Grand Jury That Declined to Charge West Linn Doctor Accused of Sexual Abuse." And the subheadline gets to the core of the issue. More than 100 people told the West Linn Police Department that former doctor David Farley sexually abused them. The chief of police believes them, but prosecutors did not secure charges. Alleged victims are furious that the grand jury did not bring criminal charges, especially since there appear to be so many victims. Grand jury transcripts are secret, but OPB used interviews and public records to try to learn why not a single charge was agreed to over the 4 months that the grand jury met. OPB reports that not all of the available evidence fully supports the alleged victim's claim that the case was mishandled by prosecutors, but also that public agencies may not have done all that they could to secure charges. OPB says it seems clear that many potential witnesses did not testify, including one key state witness, an investigator for the Oregon Medical Board, which licenses doctors and took Farley's license in 2020. Our own Christine Pitawanich sat down with two of the alleged victims recently who say they put their faith in the criminal justice system only to be let down. Now they say they'll keep fighting to ensure Farley is charged, asking the state attorney general to intervene. And before the story begins, I want to warn you, it includes very graphic details of allegations of sexual abuse.
I just couldn't quite shake the feeling of something feeling very off.
For Lisa Pratt, that's how her nightmare started.
He was a Harvard Medical School graduate and a member of our church. And beloved by so many.
But Pratt says her West Linn doctor sexually abused her between 2015 and 2018. A grand jury in Clackamas County recently decided not to indict former doctor David Farley after claims of sexual abuse and misconduct surfaced.
This is why women don't go to police. This is why people don't report, because they're not taken seriously.
According to the Oregonian, in 2019, there was a separate investigation focused on allegations of improper pelvic exams on minors and the doctor taking photos of children's genitals. That resulted in the Oregon Medical Board stripping Farley of his medical license in 2020 for dishonorable and unprofessional conduct and gross or repeated negligence. The Oregonian reported Farley has since moved out of state. Pratt remembers when she was nearly 9 months pregnant and wanted a procedure to induce labor and alleviate pain. She says Farley told her he wasn't in the office, but that she could come to his home.
When I look back, of course, it sounds crazy, but I trusted him. His wife walked me back to their bedroom and laid a towel down on the bed and walked out of the room. He returned alone by himself and shut the door. He swept my membranes, which is a very quick procedure, but then it didn't stop. And I remember laying there wondering, what's happening right now? And then I yelled, ouch, really loud. And he jumped and he started fumbling over his words.
Then later, at a 2-week checkup for her child, she says the doctor brought up concerns over breast milk production.
He stuck his hand down my shirt and started to fondle and squeeze my breast. And I just remember thinking, this is really weird. I've never ever had somebody, a doctor, do that. Even a lactation consultant after delivery touch my breast without consent.
Pratt started talking to her friends, community members, and stories came out.
We're best friends, and so in 2020, she asked me if I had ever had a strange experience with Dr. Farley.
Katie Medley is just as angry about the lack of criminal charges.
We knew him through the Mormon church, and so we also trusted him as an ecclesiastical leader.
Medley says during a pap smear, Farley put his ungloved hand inside of her.
And did something that did not feel like a medical exam, and he said, oh, everything feels so good. And then he took his hand out and fondled my genitals and tried to get me to have some kind of a corrective procedure on my labia that he thought that I needed, and the whole time touching me with his ungloved hand. And I felt a lot of shame. I left that appointment in tears.
Medley and Pratt say only 20 to 30 women testified in front of the grand jury, but they say 200 women and girls have stepped forward with allegations of sexual abuse and misconduct.
How can 200 women step forward and say, sorry, I get emotional because I'm so proud of every one of these women that have come forward, and they deserve so much better than this.
There's a misunderstanding that there were 200 reported victims. There weren't. We had, not that it's to be minimized, but we had actually half of that, just over half of that in number. My name is John Wentworth. I'm the District Attorney of Clackamas County.
Clackamas County DA John Wentworth says he understands the deep frustration and anger associated with the grand jury's decision. But Medley and Pratt feel the DA's office dropped the ball and didn't bring all the evidence forward to the grand jury.
But the bar in a criminal proceeding is always proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a very, very high bar. It's meant to be high. But at the end of the day, I also have a commitment and an ethical duty to only present to the grand jury evidence that would otherwise be admissible at trial. That's the law requires me to do that.
Still, the decision not to indict is a source of stress for women like Medley and Pratt. They're setting their sights on the Department of Justice and hoping Oregon Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum opens an investigation.
It has taken such a toll on my life. You know, I'm a mother of 4, and I have to constantly be fighting for this, and also try and be present and there for my children and give them a normal life and be a happy mom, when some days all I want to do is curl up in my bed and cry. I don't know how much harder we have to fight, but I will. I'll keep doing it, because I believe that every single one of us deserves justice.
Christine Pitawanich, KGW News.
The Clackamas County DA says the fact that Farley was a doctor and had consent for the medical procedures made the case more difficult to prove criminally. That reasoning, though, does not fly with the alleged victims that we spoke with. While they also have a civil case against Farley, they say criminal charges will protect other women and girls. We tried to contact Farley, but he did not return our call. If you'd like to learn more about this case, find this story on KGW.com or check out the OPB article that I mentioned early in our report. And if you or someone you know has been the victim of sexual assault, we wanted to give you a resource to help. The National Sexual Assault Hotline is active right now, 24/7. It's right there on your screen, 1-800-656-4673, 800-656-4673. You can also go to rain.org, that's RAINN.org, if you'd like to chat with someone virtually. Up next on the story, a little preview of a big event this weekend in Portland celebrating its 50th anniversary. It is going to be a beautiful weekend, and I hope you have plans to get outside and move your body. I plan to join several thousand people and run the Portland Marathon. It begins Sunday morning and winds around both sides of the Willamette. It's 26.2 miles. I think the first 18 miles are going to be a blast. After that, it's just hold on for dear life. If you want to follow me, my bib number is 8081. The marathon webpage will show you how. But really, you don't have to run a marathon to get some great exercise this weekend. Just go to the park or walk around your block or work in the garden. Anything helps. It's good for your body and for your brain. And by the way, if you're running the marathon, that's great. I'll be the slow guy that you run past. All right, keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com. We'll finish up right after this. That's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. But remember, the story, our story, well, that never ends. I'll see you next week.